Would having to use all 3 compounds of tyres helped with this race, says Growbag84. Look, I'm a big fan of that argument anyway. I mean, we've got 3 tyre compounds that go to every weekend, dry tyre compounds, haven't we? The medium, the hard and the soft, or the hard, the medium and the soft. So to me, I kind of feel like we could just do that anyway, and it's a mandatory 2-stopper, and then you've got to use all 3 compounds. The problem is, does Pirelli then need to bring extra compounds with them to compensate for that? I'm also not convinced more pit stops equals better racing. It does mean that drivers aren't having to conserve as much in terms of tyres, which I suppose could translate into better racing. But what I will say, to kind of answer your question, Growbag, but also kind of skit around it a little bit, I think when they said about Monaco and they're going to make it a mandatory 2-stop race, they're not making it mandatory, but you must use all 3 compounds. And I feel that's a missed opportunity. I know Monaco's probably like a terrible race to try or something anyway, but I feel like they could have tried that out and seen how that works across the weekend with allocation and what teams did in practice and things like that if they're going to do it, but they're not going to do that. So I'm not convinced it would give us better racing, but there is the potential there that if they're not having to conserve tyres quite so much, they can still push. But I don't feel today specifically, I don't feel like we saw a huge amount of tyre management. Yes, I know Leclerc went long on the mediums. Yes, I know Norris went long on the hards, but both of them had really good pace. They weren't driving several seconds off the pace to get to the pit stop, if you know what I mean. So I don't feel like it was one of those races where we saw tons of tyre management to make the 1-stopper work. So maybe today it wouldn't have made a difference, but I think there are other races where you could make an argument for all 3 compounds and a mandatory 2-stopper, particularly tracks that are tougher to overtake on, because the more pit stops you have, the more likely there is a mistake, the more undercuts you could get, and that might spice things up. So I think the Monaco thing's weird, but I don't think the extra stop would have made much difference today.